When the Canucks miss the playoffs again.
When Jim Benning trades away all our picks.
When Goldalden is scratched for the third game in a row. C4 is there. With Sedin-like vision, Horvat's work ethic, and Petey's electric personality. Here comes the C4 Canucks Hockey Podcast with Chris, Matt, Anna, and Adam.
Powered by Overtime Media.
Welcome to another episode of the C4 Canucks Hockey Podcast, as heard on CanucksHockeyBlog.com. I am Chris at Lightforce, joined virtually by Anna Forsyth at A403 and Matt Lee _61. Currently still on the IR is Adam Carter at AdamFOC. And what you don't know, what you cannot see through this podcast, is Matt is currently, I don't know what.
Being a child?
Playing with the hydraulics on his chair or something like that?
Yeah, he's doing the whole elevator bit because he's really a child at heart.
I don't have the real estate in here to do the escalator.
But you just did it. Anyway, how are you doing, Chris?
Not too bad. I mean, it's been some, crazy times as of late. The way, life is, it is just crazy 24/7, and then you add in additional craziness. Like, for instance, today, you'll notice that we have an interview lined up with a very special guest that we'll talk about in a quick moment, that I did not partake in that interview. Why? Because someone did not call before they dug.
That's very cryptic.
Some construction crew went.
It's a commercial, Anna.
Yeah, if you watch it on TV, it's like
dig.
call before you dig.
Oh, I don't know what that is.
No, they dug a hole. They dug up hydro wires just at a construction site outside of my place. And on a day in May that feels like it's the middle of August, we had absolutely no power and no guarantee that I'd be able to be here to hit the record button to get the two of you at least ready to go with our very special guest. Which, I keep saying special guest, but Anna, who was it that's going to be joining us in a short moment?
So, we are very privileged to be joined by Sportsnet's own Vancouver darling of the ringside host, Dan Murphy. He was very generous to donate his time to come talk with us. But you know what? That's just the nice guy he is.
Very nice.
And the thing
guy.
is I, want to point out, we talked about this, 2 episodes ago, about the possibility of getting more guests on. I mean, with the way the world is these days, there's a lot of people who are, just like us, stuck at home, just like you, our listeners, stuck at home. And we thought, why not shoot those shots? So, we reached out to Murph, and he graciously accepted the invitation. Albeit a week later than we had hoped, because he had accepted the invitation of another podcast that we won't talk about.
Because he's just that nice a guy. He's generous with his time.
Only so much of him
and I'm
to
not
go
knocking
around.
Murph. I totally get it.
Yeah. And he's very
But
fair.
you realize now that he's been a guest on the show, he's now considered friend of the show, Dan Murphy.
That's how it works.
Yeah.
I mean, once you're a guest, you're
always
officially
considered
friend of
him
the show.
that, but he's now official.
But no, the two of you are going to have a phenomenal conversation with Dan. You're going to talk about all sorts of topics. The fact that, some of the answers that he provided, you could tell, one, never got that question before, ever. I mean, that was some top-notch Q&A. So there are going to be things that you're going to learn about Murph that you only learn by listening to the C4 Canucks Hockey Podcast. But he was also expressively candid about topics that I kind of thought he'd dodge.
No, it was very definitively not the Dan Murphy you see at, interviewing a player at intermission, where he's a little more careful about towing the party line. So, he was very open.
Murph unplugged.
Yeah, I mean, in fairness,
Luckily,
Matt,
it's still plugged in, though.
Yeah, he was plugged in. Matt and I can actually speak to this. I remember the first time that we had Jason Botchford join the podcast, and Matt and I went into this a full set of questions. We figured we were going to get sort of day job Botch.
Yeah.
No, man, we got after hours Botch. That conversation was just unreal.
Yeah,
There were
I
lots
just
of
say,
curse words, if I recall correctly.
I love that
Yeah.
podcast.
I
Back in the
won't
day.
I won't say Murph got to sort of after hours botch level
because
here.
That's botch.
Yeah, it's different personalities and all, but he was a lot more open and candid with the answers. And I mean, some of the questions that we're gonna touch on, you get to hear in a short moment, were questions that, you know, he said honest things about people he will have to interact with, and we know the entire team listens to C4.
Yeah,
I mean it's proven by facts.
Yeah, no. Something I didn't get to mention, and in retrospect, probably glad I didn't. It might have embarrassed him, but we were talking about like the team that is John and Murph, and I was just remembering the Athletic survey of, you know, ranking the broadcast teams, and I think Vancouver came in at 12. But the way it was written up was very telling, and I think it included the line, like, find you someone that loves you the way that Vancouver loves John Shorthouse, John Garrett, and Dan Murphy. And I think that's very accurate.
Yeah. So we won't take up too much more of your time. Why don't we throw it over to the interview where Anna and Matt sit down and have a, you know, I guess, virtual fireside chat with the ever effusive Dan Murphy.
Take hitting out of the game. You can't hit anymore, so don't do it.
The unsportsmanlike conduct, I want to get an explanation on that.
No kidding.
Because how do you get suspended for unsportsmanlike conduct?
Plus interference. There's no interference there. He had the puck.
Now, Madison never ever did that before. Now, why did he do it? That because he was mad.
Well, your early favorite for the Calder Trophy, that's for sure. Elias Pettersson, you might even say your early favorite for the Hart Trophy.
Just to get back to your question, Elias is going to play plenty. He didn't play. He's going to get a lot of power play time. And, yeah, I'm concerned about our offense. We lost 200-point players, and we've got to find a way to score.
Welcome back to the C4 podcast, and we're happy to be joined this time by a very special guest, Dan Murphy, Sportsnet and Hockey Night in Canada ringside host, joining us on the show for the very first time. Dan, thank you so much for taking the time to join us on the show.
No problem. I've got plenty of time these days, it seems.
I think we all have got time these days. By the way, I've been watching a lot of your Hockey at Home series, and it's been a big fan. It's bringing a little bit of comfort during these uncertain times for all of us. So just wanted to tell you that I appreciate all that content that we're getting in the meantime, the absence of springtime playoff hockey.
It's been fun.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say it's been fun. I mean, it's access we don't usually get from most players, you know, and I hope to get Horvat this Friday, but you know, with the limited access to players during the season, just being, you know, at team practices and games. And this has kind of been fun to have a little more personality. And I think the players like it a little bit better, at least the ones that are comfortable with it, because it's not the same old questions. So we certainly have had some fun with it and hope to have a few more.
Sure. And let's sort of reverse the roles, if you will, so that we can sort of you can be on the other end of the spectrum for once. And I think it might be nice to sort of talk to you to sort of get to know the side of Murph that maybe not everyone knows. Obviously, I'm a broadcast journalism graduate myself. I know that you recently celebrated 20 years at Sportsnet. So I think it'd kind of be good to kind of know about your journey a little bit. I know you graduated from the program in 95. You got your first gig on Sports Page, if I'm remembering, around the late 90s. And then you landed with the Grizzlies back in 2000. I even remember that. Was being a rinkside host something that you always aspired to do, or was it more something you just kind of fell into?
Well, first off, thanks for reminding me on the 20 years and that I'm old. I'm always joking now that I was hired by Sportsnet the same month that Quinn Hughes was born. So that's where I'm at in my life. But I didn't. After graduating high school, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I mean, there was maybe a police officer. I wasn't thinking about broadcasting. But after my first year university, I came back to Abbotsford. And a good friend of mine, his brother worked at the Rogers Community Station in Abbotsford, and they were one of the first community stations to get a sports mobile. Kirby was the name of the man who has since passed, and he was just a fantastic guy, and he pretty much let us do what we wanted. Like, you guys want to go to a high school basketball game? Let's go. Should we go do some Pacific International Junior Hockey? Let's go. And a limited camera setup, but we got to do the play-by-play. Color, I did some Muay Thai fights with Mauro Ranallo, who now is a massive combat announcer. And the funny thing on that is Mauro and I worked at Kentucky Fried Chicken in Abbotsford together too, by the way. So, at that point, I loved sports. I played a lot growing up. I devoured it in the paper, Sports Illustrated, anything I could get. I loved it. So I loved sports, and I thought maybe this is something I can do. So I went to BCIT. After BCIT, I got the practicum at Sports Page, and after that practicum, and you have to understand at that time, Sports Page was just a massive show in the market. When I got hired, it was the hosts were Dave Randorf, John Shorthouse, Don Taylor, and Paul Carson. And Randorf left shortly after, and Barry McDonald got hired. And in my tenure there was the likes of Sean McCormick, Blake Price, Jay Durant, Blake. Who else came through those doors? Anyway, it was just, and the writers and producers. And I never really got a chance to be on the air. I got hired very part-time, 8 hours a week, 4 hours Saturday, 4 hours Sunday, and I was producing John Shorthouse's Weekend Sports. So we've been working together since 95. From there, I went from kind of associate producer to a production assistant for the big show, writer and full-time producer to the show. So I was going to full-time hours in 99, but I never could get in front of the camera. I did a couple stories, but never hosted the show. And I thought, you know what, maybe my path is going to be behind the camera as a producer. So I started looking around the job market, and I was hired by the Golf Channel in Orlando to produce Golf Central. And Golf Channel at that time was not a huge station, but it was getting some legs. But during the time I was getting my immigration papers sorted out to move down, I was probably, maybe about a month away from doing that. Sportsnet decided to hire another reporter in Vancouver. We had Jason Lee already, and I got hired. So instead of going down south to be a producer, I stayed in Vancouver to be a reporter. And that was like I said, in October of 1999.
Nice.
Wow. Something you've been known for over the years, Murph, is the interesting hairstyles you've kind of sported. And we got a little insight into that in the retrospective. Is there anything you want to bring back, or?
Well, I mean, I'm happy I still have hair. I'll say that. I've never really been one to care that much. I've joked before, my hair care product is hand soap, hotels, whatever. I mean, I don't use gel. So I know that the kind of fake faux hawk is lazy, and it's not really that anymore, but I'm just not all that creative. But yes, there have been some bad ones. Like Don Taylor used to call me Liam when I had the kind of shaggy hair, and there's no question some of those hairstyles were very questionable, but again, it's just hair. So I'll take the criticism because it is warranted. There's no question about that.
I will let you know I was horrified with that hand soap thing when I read that on your mailbag feature. But
yeah.
I guess it works. Something else we've kind of loved about you on Sportsnet over the years is your relationship with John and John in the booth. So maybe talk a bit about your relationship with them and what it's been like to observe them as a partnership over the years.
Well, I mean, so when I first started, I've known John since, like I said, 95. So we've had a friendship for a long time. And when I first started with the Canucks broadcast, it was, first off, I say when I did basketball, it was Jay Triano, who was fantastic too, a great guy. And then I'm switching to hockey. And at that time, it was Ryan Walter, who's the color man, to Jim Houston, who was the play-by-play guy. And Shorthouse is just transitioning into the TV role more. But for the most part, it's been Shorthouse and Garrett. And, I spend 120 plus days a year on the road. So you better get along with the people you work with closely. And I say, I don't know if I've had a bad day. I probably have, but I never do not look forward to going to work. Shorthouse has got a great sense of humor. We go out every night on the road for beers and dinner. Maybe 10 nights a year, we won't all be together. One guy's tired or whatever, or we're visiting another friend. And I say this about John Garrett. I might have seen him in a bad mood in my life one time. He is exactly how he appears on TV. The guy is just always in a fantastic mood, always so generous. So I don't think, if I didn't like the guys I worked with, I don't think I'd still be doing the job, because it just wouldn't be feasible to spend that much time on the road and not like the people you work with. So they're my road family. They're just fantastic.
I think the three of you
that's-
are like a national treasure, I think, to Canucks fans. I think a lot of us we don't really understand how good we have it, because you do see in some markets that, a broadcast team comes and goes, the players will come and go and stuff like that. So it's kind of been a treat for us as fans that we've been able to see this unit together for so long. You guys are kind of like the New England Patriots of broadcast teams in Vancouver. I mean, it's just consistently you
Except
guys
we
are
haven't
just
won anything.
Oh, well, you never know. I mean, I guess no. Well, you never know. Maybe you'll win a 50-50 one night, I guess, right? I think you talked about this a little bit when we started about the players and during your Hockey at Home series and how they've been sort of opening up on different platforms. And I think that's a really good segue into this next topic, which is maybe over your tenure, you've noticed that the room, if you will, has changed over the years, specifically the personalities of the players. For you, are there any sort of marked differences in how players are towards the media in 2020 compared to the early 2000s? It does seem like we've seen a bit more of a cultural shift from players where they're a little less guarded about how they are in front of the media.
Well, I think it's partly too because the league has shifted. It's a little bit of a younger league. When I first started, I was closer to the player's age. You'd have a connection more on levels of talking about where you were in your life. Now I'm as old as these guys' fathers, but I will say that I think social media has helped a lot for these guys to show their personality, and starts with Roberto Luongo, right? I mean, it's amazing to me that after the Cup final in 2011, if you had polled the people and hockey fans in North America, more people would have rather had a beer with Tim Thomas and Roberto Luongo. It's true. But a year later, it was the exact opposite because he finally found his voice via social media. So I think players are more open now to giving a little bit about themselves out there, to growing their brand a little bit. And I think that's the younger generation. And I wholeheartedly support it. I mean, I think a lot of these guys have great personalities. They have a lot to offer. They're funny. They're knowledgeable in more than just hockey. And if a guy is not comfortable with it, so be it. I mean, I have no problem with that too. But it's fair that these guys want to control their message a little bit. I have no problem with it. But I think if you can gain their trust and be fair with them, then sometimes you can pull a little bit on as well as a reporter. And I hope that that's what I've been able to do over the years, just by being fair and being honest and trying to get a relationship. And certainly I'm at an advantage in the market because they see me all the time on the road, on the plane. And that's where a little bit of trust is built.
Is there anyone that sticks out over the years as always a good interview apart from BX maybe?
Yeah. Well, I'll say for me, like guys in the league now, a lot of the guys that are BC boys, they watch me a little bit growing. So I've had some fun with Brendan Dillon. He seems like he's always a fun interview. Kuznetsov in Washington is fantastic. I mean, there's so many guys, but throughout my career, aside from Bieksa, Jason Strudwick back in the day was just a firecracker. Nolan Baumgartner to this day as a coach, he was always a fun interview. Shane O'Brien, of course, we know him, just a big doof, but just a lot of fun to be around and talk to.
Brad May seems to be one of those other ones too, I think.
Yeah, Brad May was never shy to talk. I mean, Brad May liked to talk. There's no question about that.
Yeah.
So there's been some real good characters over the years. Keith Ballard, just another fun guy that you could pull stuff out of. And on this current team, I would say that if I needed I needed an answer on something that was of importance, like you wanted to get a good, thoughtful answer, I'm probably going to Stetcher first, then maybe a Beagle or a Sutter. But if I want to get an answer that's just going to ruffle the feathers, it's going to be Antoine Roussel. And sometimes after a period where nothing's happened except some maybe altercations, I'll ask the PR, can I get Roussel? And you can see them raise their eyebrows. They know where I'm going because they know that he might go off. So of the current guys, those who I look to probably the most.
Maybe on the reverse side of the coin, are there any sort of awkward interviews with players you've had over the years? I'm sure we've always had that one or two, right? That have just been kind of, what the hell was that?
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure there have been. I don't think I can remember any names. I mean, certainly when guys, the English isn't, their first language. I mean, even Pettersson interviews, that at home with Pettersson can seem a little awkward too, because there's a little awkward silence, but you're just trying to be as comfortable as possible. Edler did his own purpose because he doesn't want to be asked to be interviewed. So I usually just tell him, like at the start of the season, when I call on you once a month, just give me a couple good answers. But yeah, I'm sure there's been a few interviews where it just, it's a thud because you have a minute and a half. You might ask a question, get a one-word answer back, and if you're not ready to go again, then you're searching for the next question. You look like an idiot, and that's happened to me.
In our efforts to sort of get to know Murph a little better, how about a couple quick hitters that we'll get to, and you can just give us your answers, and we'll leave it at those ones.
Sure.
Anna, you want to go?
Okay.
Yeah, I know you've kind of said that you don't really root for any hockey team. Your kind of time as a hockey specific to a team fan is gone. Do you have actual other sports teams that you root for?
So if I root for more people now. Like in 2011, of course, I'd be lying if I say I wasn't rooting for the Twins to win a Stanley Cup or Kevin to win a Stanley Cup. Of course, you're rooting for people like that. But if I'm cheering for strictly myself now, being kind of a fan, the Seahawks are a team I cheer for, and that was really the first team I ever saw win a championship that I cheered for. Because then growing up, I cheered for the Expos, I cheered for the Sonics, and I was too young to see them win their championship. And then the Grizzlies, I was a big basketball fan, so I never saw anybody win until the Seahawks. And then on a personal level, like I kind of feel I have a connection with Adam Hadwin and Nick Taylor on the PGA Tour. I love when they're in contention. I worked at Ledgeview with Adam's dad growing up. I still keep in touch with both of them. So I'd say for a real personal interest in rooting for stuff, of course, when Team Canada's playing, yes, but the Seahawks and then Hadwin and Taylor on the PGA Tour, I get a kick out watching them play.
Cool. I know you're a big metal guy, Murph. What's one concert maybe that's on your bucket list? It can be past or present here.
I'd probably say Tool. I saw Perfect Circle in Nashville during the playoffs a couple years ago. I've never seen Tool, so I'd probably say that one. And maybe A Day to Remember, a Florida band. They're still touring, and they were going to be touring through Pacific Northwest with Slipknot and I forget the other band. And I was thinking about seeing it, but COVID has canceled that. But I have to say I'm not a big concert person.
Okay.
I love music, but I've never been a real concert person unless it's a small venue. Then I like to see it. And of course, a lot of these bands aren't playing small venues.
Okay.
Cool. Is there a particular game that stands out that you were working on as like a favorite memory?
Well, I think Game 7, 2011, the first round. That's I was not watching in the press box anymore because we came down at the end of the third period to get ready to go in the dressing room before Taves scored. So that was good. Not involving the Canucks. I worked the 2000 Canadian Open Golf Tournament as a course commentator, so I was right there when Tiger won, which was a lot of fun. I didn't have his group. I had Garcia's group the final two rounds, but I was right behind the green when he hit that shot. That was a lot of fun. And then Vegas in the playoffs as a host for Hockey Night in their first year. I did the first two rounds, and just the environment as a first-year team, as much as we begrudged them, the city was bananas, and the rink was just so much fun, so loud. So that was kind of a real new experience. That might be a little recency bias, but that was a lot of fun as well.
Okay. Nice. This one might be a little tough, Murph. You're hosting a dinner party with 4 professional athletes, dead or alive. Who are you inviting to your dinner?
Well, after watching The Last Dance, I don't think Michael's coming. Let's see. I'm going to go with Rory McIlroy.
Okay.
As a current guy, because I think he is a blast. John McEnroe is a guarantee.
That's another good one.
He would be my first pick. He'd be my first pick overall. He was my favorite athlete growing up. So McEnroe, and then I'm probably going to go with, I'll go Larry Walker or Tim Raines from just my youth as the Expos fan.
Yep.
And probably Tim Raines in that.
Yep.
And then if I had to pick one more, am I going to go to a hockey player? Why don't we, a football player? Man, it's so tough to say. Someone that's going to be very interesting. Let me come back. I'm going to get that before the end of this podcast. And I'll come back.
Yeah, reflect on that.
I wanted very quickly. I wanted to sort of get your thoughts. How was your reaction when you saw Larry Walker get the call to Cooperstown?
I was so happy. I interviewed him the week before at the Panthers game, and at that point the numbers were trending that it looked like he was just going to miss.
Yeah.
So I was happy. I mean, I'm a numbers guy. I believe in metrics. I looked at his numbers and how they stacked up against other guys in the Hall of Fame. And much better. He was right up there with the cream of the crop. So I was just so happy for him because he seems like a real, humble, down to earth guy, and you could tell how much that meant to him.
Yeah, that was one of my highlights of the year so far. I was seeing the reaction when he got that call. Sorry, Anna, go ahead.
Yeah.
No, it's good. I was going to say, if you're a John McEnroe fan, you should definitely check out Never Have I Ever on Netflix.
Okay, I haven't seen it.
Yeah, it's a show about a teen, like Midwest teen. It's a drama, but it's narrated by John McEnroe. Like, it's very funny. Yeah. Next question. If you were to construct a Canucks Mount Rushmore, what 4 players are you having on it? And it can be skill or like just generally good interview.
Well, I can't like take one twin and not take the other twin. But people always ask me which twin. I say Daniel just because of the name, and that way I don't offend Henrik. But I'll put BX on there, certainly. Okay. I'll put a guy that played only a handful of games on there, Sean Pronger, because he's one of my best friends in life. And his last game in the National Hockey League was March 8th, 2004, the Bertuzzi game. Yep. He was the 4th guy in the pile. Never played in the league again. And then let's go, because I want to respect the past, Stan Smeel. Okay. People don't realize how good that guy was. So I've got now Kevin, Sean Pronger, Stan Smeel, and I don't know, Mount Rushmore. Can the Twins go in as one entity? Can we have
sure? It's your Mount Rushmore.
We'll allow it.
Split the head. It's the same face basically.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, we'll allow it on that case.
Okay.
Shameless plug for your book Journeyman that you co-wrote with Sean Pronger. I can admit that I have read it 2 times, so it actually is a great read. So definitely, there's got to be like a sequel. There's another co-written book with BX in the works. There's got to be something in there.
I don't know if I'd write another book. I mean, it's a labor of love. You're not getting paid a lot, especially when Sean Pronger. Maybe if I wrote about Chris Pronger, I would have had a bigger advance. But he doesn't need the money. So it was a lot of fun. We came up with the idea during the 2010 Olympics. His family was staying at our house because Chris was playing, obviously, in the tournament. And we kind of got bombed one night, and he was telling a story. I basically said, I've heard these stories a million times. I could write them. And then we said, why don't we write them? So we wrote it, and I spent countless hours on the plane after games writing. And it was a different ghostwriting experience because he would actually write 2,000-3,000 words, send them to me. I'd rework it, send back questions. He'd answer those, send it back. So it was collaborative. It wasn't just like I recorded interviews with him. He had we have the same humor. So it was a lot of fun to publish a book, but I am not a writer.
I am just going to put it out there that you could get a lot of good stories with you and Kevin Bieksa, though. I'm just going to give the nudge.
Okay.
With that, Murph, I think it's a good time to maybe transition to the Canucks here. We can actually talk some hockey, the current state of the game. We'll start with that. I mean, you've interviewed a few players now since the NHL hit pause, so you've probably had a chance to feel out what their thoughts are and what their vibes are. Have you sort of gotten that inclination from players about whether or not they think a Stanley Cup is going to get awarded in 2020?
I think guys are still hopeful. I think guys are still searching for answers logistically, how it could happen, if it's feasible. I think the league wants to do everything in its powers to get some regular season games in and finish the playoffs and start next season, December or something, because the owners want to wait as long as possible for next season to get a vaccine to get fans in the stands. But yeah, I hope they can do it. I hope they follow all the safety guidelines. Players, I think they really worry that if, it might not be a worry in this market this season, but they worry that if it's you have to be isolated from your family for 2.5 months, like Bo Horvat's having a kid, so does he leave and have to be quarantined for 2 weeks before he gets back in? If, let's say, because I heard the NBA saying that if one guy gets it, he's getting self-quarantined, but they're not necessarily going to do it. But what if the Canucks had Pettersson and Hughes both test positive for it, and you just throw in the towel? I don't know. Guys are hopeful. But I wouldn't say optimistic at this point, just because I think the unknown is just still so great.
Do you have any idea what it would, if we were to go ahead with the hub city concept, what it would look like from a broadcaster's point of view, like what you would be expected to do, and are you keen for that?
I'm going to guess they're going to try to restrict it as much as possible. So would they let rights holders in the building? I don't know. I mean, games have been called off monitor before. Certainly they could have a pool feed so we could file reports. So you could have one person in there with a bunch of players getting questions from all of us, asking questions, and you can file the report you want. Maybe just be outside, or maybe there's a mixed zone where you don't come close to anyone. So I don't really know how that would go. I think that with no fans in the stands, like for the playoffs, Sportsnet would have to figure out a way to really, do some extra things to give the viewers at home a little extra. And maybe the live mics are just part of it because you're going to hear so much more. But do the players want that?
Mm.
So yeah, I have no idea how they would do it, but I would think they would start with a really tight circle and then expand out to the must be, because you're going to have workers in there setting up in the trucks, producers, directors. You're already going to have people in there that you need, cameramen. So I think they'd want to keep a tight circle. So there's a good chance we might not be in the building, but you never know.
Right.
Certainly there's a lot of like behind the scenes magic to actually, the product that we get. And I think a lot of people just think it's a camera crew and a TV crew and a broadcasting crew, and that's all that there is to it. And I think there's maybe a bit of a misconception about that one there. Murph, there have been a few radical ideas thrown out about how to award a Stanley Cup this summer. We've seen the concept of a 24-team playoff thrown around. Is there anything that's sort of caught your eye on what you think might be an interesting way to do it? It seems like there's a no bad idea type of philosophy these days.
Yeah, I'm open to whatever. I know that teams like Detroit, they would rather not just come back and have their players, but maybe they have local rights, TV deals that have to be, completed. Yeah. There's those problems. Maybe they just have to give back the money. I would take a tournament right now. I know that Drew Doughty, and I don't know if I had not an at home, but an Instagram live with Ryan Johansson the other day, who was hilarious. But Drew Doughty said that whoever wins the cup this year, it's not a real cup. So I brought that up to Johansson. He goes, well, whoever thinks like that is a loser, because if someone's winning the cup, they're going to celebrate a Stanley Cup. So if you tell me it's a 30-team tournament, a 24-team tournament, a 12-team tournament, I would take it, as long as it's fair to the teams that were kind of vying for a playoff spot when it ended. So I think you have to start with a little bit more expanded, maybe have quick play downs, and then go on from there. But I'm watching. If it's going on, I'm going to watch.
Totally. Well, last week we discussed that for the first time, Canucks might be actually fully healthy, just as we're not playing. Yeah. And we kind of talked about what a Canucks fully healthy lineup would look like if we were to go into the playoffs soon. What do you think, like, the Canucks roster, like, really looks like, and the best lineup going into the playoffs?
Are we including Josh Levo in this as well? Like, is he?
Yeah, let's include Levo and Ferland, and let's say salary cap be damned in this case too.
Okay, well, I haven't done these types of things, but I'm going to stick with the top line, obviously. Yeah. Okay, so on that second line, let's go with. My fourth line is going to be likely Ferland, Roussel, and Levo.
Okay.
I don't think Beagle's in my lineup. I have to write it down, to be honest with you. Okay, so the 649 line. Second line, 53. Because I'm going to put Besser back up there, and I'm going to put Pearson Toffoli on the second line with Horvat. Okay. And you can interchange those two. So if I'm saying that I'm going to have Roussel with, I want to have Michael Ferland playing if he's healthy. So who are we leaving out here? We got Sutter, Gaudette,
Virtanen,
and that. Okay, that sounds right. How about a third line of
Eriksson? It's a real smorgasbord.
I might I'd have McEwen on standby, but probably Virtanen with Gaudette and Sutter at this point, just to keep an extra centerman in the lineup just in case something happens. So that's me what I'm looking at.
Nice. I mean, pretty similar from what we went with. We just left Ferland out.
Yeah, if he's healthy, I want him in the playoffs. Yeah. If we're talking, we're guaranteed he's healthy and he's not going to get hurt. I think you want him running around. But that's we're going pie in the sky.
Yeah, definitely. Sure. I mean, I think we're also coming from the perspective that we didn't see Travis leaving out Beagle, but rather than what we...
I don't think he would at this point, but I think if everybody's healthy, to me, Beagle and Sutter are a little redundant.
I think you're right.
But, certainly you can interchange one or two of them. Mm. But I'd like to have an extra center in there just in case.
We'll try and speed this up here, Murph, but I think we'd sort of be remiss if we didn't get your thoughts on the outrage that is the Judd bracket fiasco over the last week. Only in the Vancouver hockey market will you see fans freak out about a director of amateur scouting. So I wanted to get your thoughts on it. I mean, are these two sides headed towards a divorce?
Well, I'm not for some reason I've been a step behind in this, so I'm always looking to Sat for these answers. But it certainly seems like the situation is untenable now. They've offered him a contract. I don't think it's about money for Judd. I think it's about a little more autonomy and a little more responsibility. And I mean, I know people are going to hate on Jim for this because Judd's obviously he's got a good record. I wish I knew exactly which guys push for who because we get the innuendo in the stories. We don't really know, but obviously he's had a positive impact in the draft. But the GM of the team is his background scouting. You can understand that's the one side of the thing where he's really going to want to have a handle on it. And if he feels that he's butting heads and getting pushback all the time from his head guy, then maybe Jim wants him out. But I only know what I read. I'm embarrassed to say that because I can't get any answers from the people I ask. But, is it a monumental loss? Maybe. I don't know. But clearly, some of the picks, if we are to believe what we're hearing, then certainly I think it would be a loss. And I think probably teams would come looking to hire Judd Brackett.
Yeah. Just transitioning onto young players in general. We have to go way back to 67 for a NHL team that had Calder candidates in 3 straight seasons. So just maybe reflect on the different rookie seasons of Besser, PD, and then Quinn, and maybe who was more dominant.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll start off with just even Brock's 9 games he played that first year, where the fans of the team had nothing to cheer for. So you're just waiting for North Dakota to lose so you could see this kid. And I didn't know what to expect in his rookie season, but I was very impressed with his goal scoring ability. He was better than I thought. There's no question about that. Pedersen came in, and it went from not knowing if he could play in the league to not knowing if he could play center in the league to not knowing if he could be your number 1 center in the league awfully quick. And that rise was, I think it was, I don't know if it was more surprising than Brock's, but I think the total upside to me was more surprising that he was that good in his rookie season. And then Quinn Hughes again, is he too small? Can he defend? I think his was the most surprising to me. I knew his offensive capabilities. I knew his ability to skate, to zone entry, zone exit. I didn't think that he could be a top pairing guy that quickly. And so I'd probably say Quinn's is the most surprising to me out of those 3, but all 3 had great aspects.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, Murph, you've again followed, and sorry to keep bringing this up, but you've followed this team for 20 years, so you've had that chance to sort of look at different cores that have been in place. Some teams got all the way to Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final, and some couldn't make it past Minnesota in 2003. When you look at the current core that you have in place with these young players, do you think that those building blocks are all in place for this team to compete for a Stanley Cup within that 3 to 5 year period?
Yeah, I mean, as long as the team can find a couple more defensemen. I mean, I think 2011 is the best team I've ever covered. First in the league in points, top power play, second penalty kill, top goaltending. It was dominant every game they played in until the playoffs, right? And then it's just a grind. I think this team needs a couple more defensemen, especially if we see Tanev not re-signed. So I think that's probably where you're looking at the weakness. And also in the next year or 2, you still have a little bit of dead money that it's going to cost you at getting those pieces you need. So I would say, the 3 to 5 years is what I'd look at. And then you're looking at Höglander, you're looking at Podkolzin being in the league for a couple of years. And so I think the forward group is going to be perhaps as dynamic as just about any team in the league. But defense is where they're going to have to find some pieces, and goaltending. I mean, are you signing Markstrom? Right. He's not young, but he's not had a real heavy workload in his career because he didn't really become a number 1 until a couple of years ago. So I have faith in him. But at 34, 35, is he the same goaltender as he is right now? So then maybe it falls on Demko, assuming they don't lose one of them in the expansion draft.
Right. Do you think Canucks will prioritize signing Markstrom, or will Toffoli be the priority?
I think Markstrom probably will be their priority, and I think that likely this whole pandemic is probably hurting his chances to make the money, and it's unfortunate timing for him. I was super pleasantly surprised with Toffoli. I had no idea how hard he was on the puck, how good of an offensive player he was. I mean, we always saw him beating Vancouver with scoring a lot of goals at Rogers Arena, but I didn't know watching game to game. I'd love to see him back, but I just don't know with the salary constraints how this management group's going to do it. Right? I mean, you've got Louis at 6. You've still got $3 million for Roberto. Right? So I just don't know how they're going to do it without some real creative bookkeeping.
Well, I mean, you don't want to look too far ahead, but if the NHL were to give a compliance buyout because the cap sort of stays at the same, maybe that's that silver bullet that the Canucks might actually be able to take advantage of. But
yeah, but I think that after July 1st, he gets his bonus, and then he's only owed like $7 or $8 million, $6 million, $6 million left
in like
total.
real dollars, right?
So maybe, and so maybe just say, Louis, I mean, you can retire, or you're riding the bus in Utica for the rest of your career. Do you want to do that?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe he says, I'm out. Right? I mean, Marcus Naslund walked away from $5 million with the Rangers. Said, I'm done. So maybe.
I think we'll leave it at that, Murph. Before we let you go, you wanted to finish your celebrity dinner table. You had Rory McIlroy, you had John McEnroe. I forgot the third one, and then you had a fourth that you were thinking on.
I had McEnroe, Tim Raines,
right?
Rory, and Marshawn Lynch.
Okay. I don't know how much you'll get out of him, though.
Oh, I think he'd be fine in that situation. And he'd tell us to take care of our mentals. So that would be good. And our chickens.
All right. Well, we'll leave it at that, Murph. Thank you again so much for your time today. We really appreciate having you on. Again, I think we're hoping you and your family stay safe during these times. And perhaps we'll see you down the road for some very rare summertime hockey. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me on. It's fun.
All right. We'll be back to wrap up the C4 podcast after this.
Okay, again, I mean, we kicked this show off leading into the fact that you're going to have a very, phenomenal conversation with Dan. I mean, it was such a pleasure having him. We went just past a half hour, and I'm sitting here thinking like, oh man, could we not talk to him for another 30 minutes?
Right.
Like, could this conversation not continue? Like, there were questions that guys sort of watching you guys sort of, have to sort of skip over in the interest of time, where it's like, oh man, we'd love to hear, Dan's thoughts on this.
Yeah, we wanted to, we could have dug deeper on every single thing we asked him. And, even our quick hitter segment, as you will have just heard, was not that quick because he's just such an interesting guy and had interesting responses.
What did you think of his dinner party invite list?
I mean, I don't want to start contradicting guests who have generously donated their time, but I think Rory McIlroy would be boring AF. But
okay, I mean, I when he said that name, I'm like, oh, interesting. And I mean, he did talk about the fact that he's into golf.
He is. I mean,
he was going to work for the golf network.
I'm not into golf, but that's not why I said it. Just from interviews, he seems like a really boring guy. Literally, the only interesting
Brock
thing
Besser's a
seems to be his
boring guy.
accent, but he is a boring guy. A lovely guy, but a boring guy.
I would be interested in a conversation with Marshawn Lynch, though.
Right?
And imagine sitting at the table, John McEnroe to your left, Marshawn Lynch to your right.
It's definitely a great mix.
Tim Raines, who's sitting over there, good guy and all that. Got picked
just
over
minding
Mary
his
Walker
own business.
This dinner, yeah, exactly, minding his own business. And apparently, Rory McIlroy, who's just going to be sitting there like frog on a log, just doing absolutely nothing, according to Anna. But the one topic that I actually wanted to address, and I kind of felt it awkward because I'm sitting back here on the production side, worried about sort of everything that might be going on here and interrupting the conversation. But when you talked about, how, Canucks fans, specifically, not so much social, but Canucks fans have really, zoned in on the Judd Brackett situation. I wanted to sort of get his thoughts on Canucks Twitter. I can't say I know too many of the different teams' sort of Twitter environments or what social looks like around the league. but Canucks Twitter is definitely a thing. And,
Definitely.
Murph would have been around for that sort of entire period of an evolution. So I'm curious what his thoughts would be, because it is very visceral now. Like at least I know Anna, I know you would be aware of this. I'm not entirely sure if Matt paid too much attention, but just last week, Daryl Keeping made a comment on Twitter about, like, has Canucks Twitter sort of always been this way? And, like, do the OGs remember? Now, what's interesting is there's people who identify themselves as OGs that think that 2011 was it.
That was it.
Right.
That was the Malcolm Gladwell tipping point.
Yeah, I don't consider myself an OG because I was around from like 2011-ish, but mainly 2012, like mainly the 2011-12 season onwards.
But like the actual buildup of Canucks Social, happened a few seasons prior to that. Like it was before the Olympics, and 2011 was when it sort of peaked, ish, maybe in 2012 as well, you could say. And then from there, it's gone crazy. Why? Because as we have seen, the Vancouver Canucks have, gone through a transitional period of time themselves, where the difference between retool and rebuild is simply a word. Yeah. But I was curious what his thoughts would be, and if he might open up on the topic. Again, I'd like to think that I can say I'm an OG, or at least I'm one of the two.
Both.
We'll have to save it for a future episode with Murph.
Yeah, I'm sure we'd love to have him back. So I'm sure we will at some future point.
The other thing too, and I think this is just more a question for you, our listeners. Are there any other guests that you'd love to hear join us on C4? And if there happens to be a particular person or group of people that you'd like us to reach out to, I mean, this one we made happen because you, our listeners, identified. In fact, a few of you on Twitter said, like, straight off the top, Murph. Well, okay. Anna went to work, firing through her phone, pulled out the contacts that were necessary to make the connection and made it happen. Matt and I can do the same, though Anna's probably much better connected than we are. And if there happens to be anyone, that you want to talk to in Bowen Island, we can reach out to Adam. He might be able to go and knock on their door.
Yeah. Although if you don't have power in Richmond, I don't know what's going on over in Bowen.
Yeah, that's true. Well, in fairness, they probably call before they dig on Bowen Island. I presume that would be the case.
Sure.
The other thing I just want to mention is that over the past year-ish, you have heard this podcast being brought to you by the Overtime Sports Network, Overtime Media Network. Earlier this year, about a month or so ago, the network reached out to us and to advise that due to a variety of different factors, none of which were related to the pandemic, as unfortunately coincidental as it might be, that the methods to which they used to determine membership at the network had changed. And unfortunately, those changes affected us adversely. So the C4 Canucks Hockey Podcast is no longer going to be heard on the Overtime Media Network. Now, we are still there, and I would like to thank Overtime for everything that they've done for us over the past year and a bit. I mean, they've been a gracious host and have provided us opportunity. But we are going through that period of change. If you happen to be one of our insiders in C4 Discord, one of the elite patron members, this is something you already know. I mean, this transition has happened. So what does this mean for this podcast? Well, in the short term, not a whole lot. We're still going to come to you each and every week, save for those weeks where there happens to be a holiday. But dependent on circumstances as they are, there may need to be a period of a hiatus that we didn't plan for as we sort of transition from one host to another. And we're working through that. Rest assured, we're not going to just outright disappear. This podcast is going to stick around. We've been around as long as we have, and by gosh, we ain't going anywhere ever. They'll probably have to sell the team and relocate to Memphis before I consider this podcast done.
Yeah, we're like a weird stain on the wall. Like,
I understood that reference, by the way.
I mean, I did too. It wasn't like a weird Canadian commercial from however many years ago. I did understand that one. But yeah. Thanks to Overtime, we had fun being part of a big, weird sports family. But yeah, directions new, pastures new, new adventures.
Mm-hmm. And potentially us still stuck at home, recording an episode. I'm just thankful that Matt put a shirt on today. Just let's be straight up.
Although he did warn us that he's not wearing pants.
Yeah.
I was told it was pants optional for this show.
So please do not pan down with the camera.
Don't give him ideas. It's the last thing we need.
We'll save that for the next episode with Murph.
Yeah, you guys, thank God, you listeners, it's just visual only for you guys.
Yeah.
You guys should just be happy I stayed on my best behavior.
Yeah, very briefly.
Yeah. So as we look to wrap up this episode, a little bit shorter than normal, but I think probably significantly more valuable with the content provided to us by Dan Murphy. Anna, anything that you'd like to share with all of our listeners?
Just very thankful to Dan for sharing his time, sharing his insights, and yeah, hopefully there'll be some more guests to come.
Cool. Matt?
Just want to thank Dan Murphy for his time, I guess. It was a real treat to have him on, and I think if we were making a Mount Rushmore of Canucks broadcasters, Dan Murphy would be on it.
Oh, that's cute.
Okay, so Dan Murphy gets the first spot. Who get the...
Well, he gets one of the spots.
Yeah, but
did John and John take one spot?
Yeah, they're like
let
the
him put the twins.
Okay, but where's Tommy?
Oh, he's in there.
And is Jim Houston in the
Jim
picture
Houston,
here?
Jim Robson. There's a lot of good names. But you got to have a ringside host. You have to have a ringside host.
I don't necessarily. If we're going to actually go and put Murph up there, and we have 3 spots left, I actually think that means John and John don't get a spot.
I mean, I'm obviously recently biased. I don't even remember anyone else but John and John, so I do love Jim Houston.
I will quickly say, if I was assembling my dream team for a Canucks game, it would be Jim Robson and Tom Larscheid with Dan Murphy as my ringside host.
See, and I don't disagree with that, but I kind of want to throw Ray Ferraro in there. For fans that don't remember, Ray
he wasn't a regular.
No, but he was involved, and I really dig what Ray brings to the table.
Oh, I love listening to him. But honestly, you could put him on the intermission panel, and I'd be happy with that.
Which he also was for a period of time when he was on Vancouver Sports Radio. So, anywho, maybe you, our listeners, need to chime in as to who the 4 spots of the Canucks broadcast Mount Rushmore happen to be. Shoot us a message on Twitter at the C4 Podcast, or jump into C4 Discord. And the easiest way to get into C4 Discord is bit.ly/C4 Discord, all caps. It's bit.ly/C4 Discord. Again, capitalize every one of those letters. Final words for me. Thanks you for continuing to tune in as we go through these crazy times. Hopefully each and every week that you get to listen to an episode, we bring some level of joy, yet informative experiences to you. I know when Matt's here, you're guaranteed to hear us talk Canucks hockey, and when it just happens to be Ann and I, it's a lot more fun. So whichever option you like more, please let us know. So on behalf of Anna Forsyth at 8403, Matt Lee at Matt Lee _61, myself, Chris at Lightforce, and Adam Obanall Carter at Adam FOC, I'm going to sign this magical episode off with those 2 words. We're out.